So here's a question. What if the planets didn't form naturally? What if they were shot out of the sun? Venus spins backwards. Mars looks bombed. Mercury's too dense. Saturn's rings don't make any sense. Ancient myths say the sun gave birth. NASA won't talk about it. And the deeper you dig, the weirder it gets. And now I get it. It sounds like sci-fi, like something you'd hear from your weird uncle after 3 beers in a History Channel marathon. But when plasma physicists, ancient astronomers, and magnetic field anomalies all start whispering the same story, you stop laughing and you start looking. Textbooks say it all started peacefully, a gentle cloud of dust, swirling in silence, slowly clumping together into the planets we know today. But that story falls apart the second you actually look. The sun hoards 99.8% of the mass, yet holds barely any of the spin. Venus moves backwards, like it's trying to escape something. Mars is a shattered shell, scorched, cracked, magnetically dead. Mercury's a lump of exposed metal, way too dense to make any sense. Saturn's rings are so young, they shouldn't exist. Uranus is sideways. Neptune shouldn't be where it is. And Jupiter? It's practically a failed star. This isn't the signature of balance. This is the footprint of trauma, the aftermath of something explosive, violent, deliberate. And here's the part nobody wants to touch. There's a theory, banned, blacklisted, mocked, that says the planets didn't form in place at all. They didn't grow from grains of dust. They were ejected, fired out of the sun itself in a chain of plasma eruptions, magnetic implosions, and electromagnetic birth events we still don't understand. Not random, not slow, not gentle. Something happened, and the scars are still everywhere. Because when you pull back the curtain, when you strip away the polite science and start following the evidence, you find something you were never supposed to see. That maybe the solar system didn't form, it was reset. Real quick, before we go any further, this channel doesn't run on ad dollars or brand deals. It runs on you. If you want to help keep the lights on and the rabbit holes open, please hit subscribe. It's free, and yeah, it makes a huge difference for the channel. All right, let's keep going. All right, let's start where every astronomy class does, with the nebular accretion model. The safe, clean, polite version of how our solar system came to be. It goes something like this. Roughly 4.6 billion years ago, a big cloud of gas and dust floating through space decides to collapse in on itself. Gravity kicks in. The middle of the cloud becomes the sun. The leftover material flattens into a disk. And from that disk, tiny particles stick together, then become pebbles, then boulders, then planetesimals, and eventually the 8 planets we know today. Pretty neat, right? Except it doesn't work. Because when you actually start looking at the details, the whole thing starts to wobble hard. Let's start with something simple. Angular momentum. The sun has a 99.8% of the solar system's mass. It's the big boss in the middle. But when you measure the total spin of all the planets combined, they hold over 98% of the angular momentum. So wait, what? The massive center barely spins, and the tiny orbiting planets are whipping around like a hyperactive figure skater. That's like saying you built a merry-go-round where the horse is spinning faster than the engine. And it gets worse. According to the model, the closer you are to the sun, the hotter it was during formation. So only metals and rocks could survive that heat. That's why Earth, Mercury, Venus, and Mars are rocky supposedly. But the gas giants, Jupiter and Saturn specifically, shouldn't exist. Not only are they massive, but they're mostly made of hydrogen and helium. The problem? Those elements should have been blasted away by the sun's early radiation before they had time to clump together. Yet somehow, these bloated giants formed way out in that cold, way too fast, holding onto the very gases they shouldn't have access to. And that's not even touching the weirdness of spin and tilt. Venus, it spins backwards. Uranus, it's tilted 98 degrees. It basically rolls sideways through space. And then there's Earth's moon, which, despite being way too big to be a normal moon, spins just right to always show us the same face. None of this fits the gentle forming disk story. It fits a system that's been smashed, rearranged, broken. But don't worry, mainstream science has an answer. It's called the NICE model. No, seriously, that's the actual name, after the city in France. The NICE model is the giant cosmic band-aid NASA uses to explain away everything weird by saying, well, maybe the planets formed one way, and then everything got scrambled by a few gravitational interactions. Basically, it made sense, then Jupiter got rowdy and knocked over the furniture. No evidence, no mechanism, just math gymnastics to patch the holes. So let's be honest, this isn't a working model. It's a cosmic crime scene with the furniture rearranged, the lights flickering, and a chalk outline in the orbit of Neptune. And if this is the best we've got, then maybe we're asking the wrong questions. Alright, so the official version is leaking from every scene. So let's ask the unaskable. What if the planets didn't slowly clump together over billions of years? What if they were launched? There's a theory, ridiculed, ignored, and never fully debunked, that says our planets didn't form from the leftovers. They were born from the sun itself. It's called the Stellar Fission Hypothesis. And here's how it works. In its earliest phase, the sun was spinning violently fast. We're talking high energy rotation, unstable magnetic fields, extreme plasma activity. Not the calm orb we see today, but a young star under pressure. At some point, that spin reached a breaking point. The sun didn't just shine, it cracked. According to the theory, chunks of its outer layers, made of ionized plasma, molten metals, early fusion products, were ejected in sudden bursts. Think of solar flares on steroids. Coronal mass ejections so extreme they didn't fade, they drifted. Those fragments then cooled, condensed, and stabilized into the planets we now call home. It sounds impossible, right? Except it's not as crazy as it sounds if you know where to look. Take magnetohydrodynamics, the study of how magnetic fields and fluid motion interact in plasma. In extreme cases, spinning plasma under compression can erupt violently in what's known as a Z-pinch, a magnetic choke point that releases energy and matter outward. Now let's zoom out. Imagine the sun, an unstable, rapidly rotating nuclear furnace, hitting a magnetic choke. Boom! Ejection, instability, birth. Alright, so still not buying it? Well, let's talk J. Marvin Herndon, a geophysicist with the kind of ideas that make NASA sweat. He proposed that planetary cores might not be leftover iron junk from random collisions. They might be self-sustaining nuclear reactors. Specifically, he suggested that Earth has a natural fission reactor at its core, and that planets could form as condensed blobs of solar plasma with inherent radioactive material. In other words, they didn't just get hot from friction, they started out nuclear. Then there's Immanuel Velikovsky. Now, don't roll your eyes yet. Sure, he was a pariah in the scientific community, but not because his ideas were dumb. It was because they were too hard to disprove. He argued that Venus wasn't an ancient planet. It was a new arrival, ejected from Jupiter in a catastrophic event witnessed by ancient civilizations and recorded as myth. He connected planetary chaos to historical cataclysms, saying the skies changed in human memory. Mainstream science laughed, but they couldn't explain why so many cultures described gods of fire, wandering stars, and planets in battle. So here's the wild part. Herndon gave us the physics, Velikovsky gave us the story, and Plasma Cosmology, the study of charged matter in space, gave us the mechanism. Put all three together, and the question shifts from is this real to why has this idea been buried for 70 years? If you've made it this far, you already know we're off the map. But here's the thing. The deeper we go into this theory, the less it starts to feel like sci-fi, and the more it starts to feel like science we weren't supposed to take seriously. Enter plasma cosmology. This isn't new. This isn't fringe. It's just inconvenient. Because plasma, ionized gas, the most common state of matter in the universe, doesn't behave the way your high school astronomy teacher told you. It's not passive. It's not simple. It's alive with current. And when you bring electromagnetism into the picture, things stop spinning politely and start acting like they've got an attitude. Let's start with Birkeland currents. Vast streams of electric current flowing through space, connecting stars and galaxies like hidden wires. These aren't theoretical. We've observed them. They even interact with Earth's own magnetic field and cause auroras. Then there's the Z-pinch effect, a process where magnetic fields created by electric currents compress plasma into tight columns, storing enormous amounts of energy. Eventually, these columns snap, and then sudden, violent release of energy and matter. If this sounds familiar, it should, because solar flares, coronal mass ejections, sunspots, all of them show Z-pinch behavior. Which raises a terrifying possibility. What if the sun isn't just a fusion reactor, but an electric node in a galactic power grid? This is the core of the electric universe theory. It proposes that gravity doesn't rule everything, that electric charge plays a far bigger role than we've been told, that galaxies spin not because of some invisible dark matter, but because of electromagnetic fields we're only now beginning to understand. And that stars, like our sun, behave less like isolated gas balls and more like transformers, constantly interacting with galactic currents. And just like the transformers, they don't always hold their charge. Imagine a young sun, overloaded with energy, spinning fast, destabilizing at the magnetic seams. A sudden Z-pinch collapse. Out comes a blast of matter. Not random, not chaotic, structured, spiraling, electrically alive. And if plasma theory holds, that's exactly how planets could form. This model turns the sun from a slow-burning stove into a pulsing, reactive heart. And it turns planetary formation from a quiet dust ballet into a violent electrical storm. So why haven't you heard this before? Well, because plasma cosmology challenges everything. Gravity loses its crown. Fusion becomes one piece of a much bigger puzzle. And suddenly, planets born from solar ejection aren't just possible, they're expected. Let's be real. Ancient myth is usually the last place science goes to look for answers. Too poetic, too dramatic, too full of angry sky gods and flaming chariots, right? But sometimes myth doesn't read like a parable. It reads like a warning, or worse, a memory. And when the stories line up with the science we just covered, the plasma physics, the violent solar ejections, the birth of planets by fire, then it starts to feel like someone saw something we forgot. Let's start with Egypt. Ra, the solar deity, was said to have created his children by spitting them into the sky. Spit, not thought. Violent ejection. His offspring, Shu, god of air, and Tefnut, goddess of moisture, didn't gently drift into being. They were launched, expelled, birthed with force. So you tell me, doesn't that sound like solar plasma jets creating hydrogen and water-rich planetary bodies? So now let's jump to India. The Vedic texts describe the creation of the cosmos as a series of fiery births, violent, radiant cosmic children blasted into being. The god Agni, the personification of fire, devours himself and then births the world through flame. Stars, planets, even Earth, said to emerge from bursts of energy, not calm assembly. Compare that to Z-pinch events and magnetic reconnection, plasma behaviors that start with compression and end in explosive separation. Now pivot to the Sumerians, one of the oldest written civilizations on record. Their gods didn't sit around weaving baskets and humming lullabies. They went to war in the sky. Tiamat, the great mother of chaos, is ripped apart by Marduk, a storm god wielding bolts of power. Her body becomes the heavens and earth. Her eyes become the sources of rivers, and her tail flung into the stars. It's not a metaphor for creation, it's a narrative of cosmic destruction and rearrangement. If you reframe gods as celestial bodies, stars, planets, comets, you're reading an ancient account of planetary collision and ejection. And then there's Enoch. The book of Enoch tells us of stars that disobeyed, that left their appointed paths and were cast down from the heavens. They're chained in darkness for eternity, awaiting judgment. Is that morality? Or is it an ancient reference to planetary bodies flung from orbits, caught in a chaotic path, or buried in the dark reaches of space? Because suddenly, myth after myth, we're seeing a pattern. Creation isn't gentle, it's violent, reactive, charged electric. It doesn't matter if it's Ra spitting planets, Tiamat being torn apart, or fallen stars breaking ranks. The underlying structure is the same. Something once happened in the sky that was too massive to forget. So they told stories. And now we call those stories myths. But what if they weren't metaphors at all? What if they were survivors' logs, encoded, repeated, and disguised to last? Alright, so let's stop thinking about the solar system like it's a family portrait. Because when you actually start looking at the planets like a crime scene investigator, this starts feeling a lot less like a shared origin story and a lot more like the wreckage of something we were never supposed to notice. Let's start with Venus. Venus doesn't spin like the others. In fact, it barely spins at all, and when it does, it goes the wrong direction. Its rotation is so slow, one day on Venus lasts longer than its entire year. It's smothered in carbon dioxide, hot enough to melt lead, and wrapped in clouds of sulfuric acid, as if it was once cooked from the inside out. That's not the signature of a planet gently coalescing from a gas cloud. That's the aftermath of mechanical trauma. Now, take a look at Mercury. Mercury is tiny, barely bigger than the moon, but it's dense, too dense. It's made mostly of iron, like the outer layers were shaved off in some ancient high-energy impact. Its surface is covered in jagged cliffs and collapsed terrain, scars that don't match its size or position. It's like someone ripped the crust off, and what we're left with is just the exposed engine block. Then there's Mars. The red planet looks like it was hit and left to die. Its northern hemisphere is smooth, low, and empty. Its southern half is pitted, high, and destroyed. That's not natural erosion. That's asymmetry on a planetary scale. It has no global magnetic field, suggesting something shut down inside it. And its moons, Phobos and Deimos, are irregular, unstable, and possibly hollow. Captured? Manufactured? Nobody knows. But they don't belong. They're barely hanging on. Now shift to Saturn. Its rings are too perfect, too fresh, too pristine. They don't look billions of years old, they look new. Current estimates say they may be less than 100 million years old. That's like finding a brand new tire on a car from the Triassic period. And the composition? Almost entirely water ice. No dust, no soot, no buildup. It's like something big got ripped apart recently and left a trail of perfect debris behind. And then there's Jupiter, the king of the solar system. Massive, magnetic, wrapped in storms. But here's the weird part. It's almost too massive. It has the pressure, the structure, even the composition of a small star. But it never ignited. Why? Did it almost become a sun? Was it robbed of something? Interrupted? Or was it never supposed to ignite because it was born during a different kind of stellar event altogether? Now, just when you think the weirdness has peaked, enter Uranus. Uranus is the quiet weirdo at the back of the room, until you realize it's lying on its side. Its axial tilt is nearly 98 degrees. It doesn't rotate, it rolls. And that's not all. Its magnetic field, tilted and off-center, wildly misaligned with the planet itself. And yet, its rings and moons orbit along that same tilted plane, which means the tilt happened early, not later. Something knocked Uranus over so hard, the entire system fell sideways and just stayed there. Next, Neptune. Less flashy, but no less suspicious. In order for current models to work, Neptune and Uranus must have swapped orbits after forming. You heard that right. The only way they fit is if they change seats mid-flight. On top of that, Neptune gives off more heat than it receives, like there's something boiling inside it we don't understand. Not explained, just filed under mystery. And what about Earth? What about us? Well, you're standing on the crime scene itself. Earth is the only planet with a large stabilizing moon. That moon just happens to be perfectly positioned to cause solar eclipses. Same apparent size as the sun in the sky, which is statistically absurd. Its origin makes no sense either. It's too big to be captured, too weird to have formed with us. Might have been created. So they invented the giant impact theory to explain it. Basically, something the size of Mars hit Earth. A chunk flew off, and that became the moon. Zero direct evidence, just a narrative patch. But here we are, axis tilted just enough, temperature just right, moon perfectly aligned, and everyone else in the system looks like they've been through hell. This doesn't look like a solar family that grew up together. It looks like survivors of a cosmic disaster, scattered, reshaped, misaligned, and barely holding on. And if that's true, then maybe Earth isn't the center of a system. Maybe it's the last stable bunker in a celestial war zone. Okay, let's pull back for a second, because we've just walked through plasma storms, mythic sky battles, tilted planets, and stars that may have given birth to their own children. It's wild. It should feel wild. And this is the part where most channels lean into it, crank the music, flash the graphics, and start talking like it's already proven fact. That's not what we do here. This is Divergent Files. We don't sell conspiracies. We test stories. And if they break, we call it out. So let's do that now. First, the fission theory. The idea that the sun spun so fast in its early life that it shed matter, maybe even whole planetary embryos, in violent ejections. It's not a YouTube fever dream. It was proposed seriously by early 20th century astrophysicists, including George Darwin. Yes, Darwin's son, who suggested Earth and the Moon might have split from a rapidly rotating proto-Earth. Versions of this idea were part of mainstream debate before the accretion disk model took over. Was it set aside? Yes. But disproven? No. Next, the plasma cosmology. This is where things get more controversial. Not because it's junk science, but because it steps on gravity's toes. Plasma cosmology looks at the universe through the lens of electricity, charge, and magnetic fields, rather than just mass and motion. It challenges the Big Bang, dark matter, and a few other sacred cows, which is probably why it got benched. But parts of it, they're still studied, still cited, and still used to explain things gravity alone can't. Birkeland currents, double layers, Z-pinches, these are real phenomena. We've built labs around them. Dismiss the theory if you want, but don't pretend this physics isn't solid. Then there's the mythology. Let's be honest, ancient texts are not science. You can't peer review a creation myth. But here's the thing, people didn't write stories about things they couldn't see. If dozens of civilizations across time describe the sky splitting open, gods emerging from fire, stars falling, planets colliding, maybe they weren't just imagining things. Maybe they were encoding what they saw, the only way they could understand it. Now, we're not saying it's true. We're saying it hasn't been disproven. So there's a difference. And when every official explanation starts needing patches, guesses, and duct tape, you start to notice the strain. The closer you look, the more the standard model starts sweating through its collar. So, is any of this actually real? That's not our call to make. But we'll tell you this. The story we've been given, it doesn't hold. And if we don't investigate the gaps, someone else will fill them in for us. Let's stop pretending this is normal. This isn't a solar system. It's a sealed file. A redacted report written in orbits and radiation burns. Venus spins backwards like it's recoiling from something. Mars is a mutilated hemisphere away from being a full obituary. Uranus got hit so hard it never stood up straight again. The moon is an illegal alien with no passport in a front row seat to every eclipse. And Saturn wears a ring like a memorial, not a decoration. This place isn't peaceful. It's post-traumatic. And the worst part? We're the ones who forgot. Because someone, somewhere, decided to bury this story under equations, models, and confident shrugs. They gave us a fairy tale about dust and gravity, but the evidence tells a different story. This system didn't form. It was recovered, pieced back together after something tore through it. Rearranged like a crime scene, just neat enough to keep us asking questions. But if the sun really did give birth to the planets, if they were fired out, torn off, split away, then we're not children of the cosmos. We're fragments, shrapnel from a larger design, living on the edge of an aftermath we're only beginning to recognize. And maybe the reason everything feels off, the rotations, the magnetism, the chaos, is because this isn't a system meant to thrive. It's a containment zone. And us? We're the descendants of survivors, built to forget, trained to obey the story, taught to trust a narrative that never lined up. But now you've seen the cracks. And if this hit you the way it hit me, then do one thing. Don't ever look away. Thanks for watching. I'm Ralph, Wendell's off sulking about humanity, and this has been Divergent Files. If something in this episode cracked your view of reality just a little, if you paused, rewound, or just felt that weird itch behind your eyes, then hit like, hit subscribe, and do the button dance below. Because trust me, this kind of content doesn't win favors with the algorithm. And if you want to go deeper, way deeper, join us on Patreon. For just $3 a month, you'll get access to the stuff that doesn't survive YouTube. Early releases, extended cuts, behind the scenes chaos. That's all over at patreon.com/Divergent Files. We're also off platform now. Divergent Files Project Podcast is live, where the filters drop and the boundaries blur. You'll find full episodes, off-the-record dives, and the kind of material the main channel can't touch. And hey, this isn't a broadcast. This is a conversation. If you've got a theory, a hunch, or a topic that's been eating at you, drop it in the comments. I read them all, and your idea might be the next rabbit hole we fall into. The solar system isn't what we were told, but that's the pattern, isn't it? The deeper you dig, the weirder it gets. Stay curious, stay sharp, and remember you are truly appreciated.